What does the signing of Kyle Van Noy mean for Odafe Oweh, David Ojabo, Tyus Bowser, and the injured Ravens pass rushers? Plus, what can he bring to the Ravens? Talk about all that and more coming up next year on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast here. I'm your host, Kevin Ostraker of Ravens Wire, as always, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, a huge shout out to everybody for making Locked On Ravens your first listen each and every day. And we are free and available all podcasting platforms in audio form and in video form on YouTube. You can subscribe for free, audio, video, the same show. Also in subtext for exclusive content, one-on-one text conversations, and a lot more over there. Here with us, it's usually our Purple Friday guest here with us on a Wednesday, former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail, coming to you, Q, after a game where it was disappointing for the Ravens. I think a missed opportunity in that Colts game to go atop the division still at 3-0, but sloppiness on the offensive side of the ball, some interesting coaching decisions end up doing the Ravens in. And, I never want to use the refs as an excuse. I don't think the Ravens should have ever let it get to the point where the refs made those calls and they had as big of an impact as they did. But a couple of missed calls on Zay Flowers essentially were the final nails in the coffin to an otherwise very sloppy offensive day for the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, this is the National Football League, but this is also the enigma that makes it the National Football League. So I guess all the gamblers that are out there and the people who are wagering on different games and different parlays and all that, I guess they can say that, man, the fix is in, that somehow, some way, the guarantee of whether it be the Ravens, whether it be the Cowboys, I think there was like another game that had like a crazy upset. This week, it was about as bad as I am hoping it gets, because then you can use this as a springboard for your mindset as a team to say, look, we can't afford just to show up and expect the other team not to bring their best. And that's what we're seeing. Well, we saw, we should say, as far as against the Colts. The Colts brought their best. Heck, offense, defense, mother of pearl. Gay was amazing with his 4 field goals, all over 50 in those conditions. Being at the game, pregame was chill. Wind was kind of steady, but then you look at what started to transpire where the rain was coming down and it was constant, and he had a kicking day for the ages against the GOAT of all GOATs and Justin Tucker. So all of it. It was an anomaly, I hope, and I'm hoping that, from a Ravens aspect of things, that they can take, strong takeaways from this and not let it happen again.
Yeah, it's not often, Q, a kicker goes into Justin Tucker's house and upstages him. But yeah. Matt Gay did that 100%. And also, before I get started, I know it was a sad day in Baltimore yesterday, the passing of Brooks Robinson, who, did so much for the Baltimore community, both on and off the field, one of the best to ever do it. So, of course, my condolences to the Robinson family and the city of Baltimore, who I know is hurting right now for sure. But Ravens-wise, Q, we actually about an hour or so ago now at the time of this recording, got word that Kyle Van Noy officially being brought in for the Ravens, signing him to the practice squad at first with the assumption that he'll be called up to the active roster sooner rather than later. We talked about Kyle Van Noy a little bit a couple months ago when we were debating, should it be Van Noy, should it be Jadeveon Clowney? I think Yannick Ngakoue was still on the market at that time. We talked about edge options. Ravens pass rush has been a bit inconsistent this season. But the fact of the matter is that Odafe Oweh is now injured with the ankle injury. David Ojabo left last week's game, the Colts game, with an ankle injury. Tyus Bowser is still on the NFI list. No word on whether he'll be ready by the time he's first ready to come off. I want to get into what Kyle Van Noy brings, but I first want to know your opinion, and based off of your training backgrounds and everything what does it mean that so early on, with 3 guys out, I think they had to make this move, but I don't think it bodes particularly well for the prospects of a guy like Oweh or Ojabo or Bowser coming back anytime soon.
Yeah, so when it comes down to the game of football as a collision sport, we all know that. We all know that you have to prepare your body for that collision. there's a good way to prepare your body, and there's another way to prepare your body. That the reason why I don't say it's a bad way, it's been going on, and there have been some really good performances in the other way of training to help your body get better. We've been talking about this, you and I, on this platform, Locked On Ravens, for, good God, going on 2 seasons and a half now. And it just comes down to literally simply as this, that your nervous system, it never turns off. There's a lot of input that you put into your body that under pressure you utilize. And so I think for, training and practice and putting into play a level of helping your body prepare itself for the rigors of the sport, of the collision. And when you train it the way in which you put in some improper neuroconnectivity, then under pressure, your body is going to break down. Whereas when you're talking about the right way to train and the way in which there's a good, strong movement pattern in your body, and you're able to absorb force and move the correct way, I mean, that right there, that's the secret sauce, if you will, when it comes to, avoiding some injuries. Now, again, collision sport, absolutely. There are some things that happen. You're like, whoa, how could that guy have avoided that? Or, there are some things, that they can't avoid. But to have the amount of soft tissue injuries and the amount of, non-contact as well, that's the tough part. That's where I'm like, man, train the body the right way so it can know how to be safe within the structure of this violent collision sport.
And now we know that Dafe always in a walking boot for his ankle injury. So again, I think the signing of Kyle Van Noy, even if one of those guys was going to return, if Ajabo could play this week, if Oye could play this week, they're already down so many players. It almost seems pretty reminiscent, Q, of what they did last year with Jason Pierre-Paul, when, again, guys were going out and guys were getting injured, and they went out there and signed Pierre-Paul. But we're talking, should it be Clowney? Should it be Van Noy? Well, now they have both of them, which actually I think is kind of cool because they both play very different roles, but roles that are really important. Clowney's that inside-outside guy in terms of can play, flip into the defensive line mold, and then also can be an edge rusher on the outside. It's played pretty well for them so far through 3 weeks. But Van Noy is a guy who can play a little bit of inside linebacker, better in coverage, which the Ravens love to drop their guys back. We've seen a lot of Tavius Robinson over these last 3 weeks, which I think, again, has been better than I thought it would go. But I think Van Noy just brings you a veteran. What do you think Van Noy brings to this team, Q? Because he's a guy that is Super Bowl experience, Super Bowl champion, someone who over the course of his career, 33 and a half sacks with 22 and a half, I think, of those, or 23 and a half 22 and a half coming in the past 4 seasons. So consistency there. Do you think this was a move the Ravens had to make? What do you think he brings?
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, it is a scenario where your roster is being, just plummeted from the standpoint of injury. Obviously, you need to get to the passer. You're talking about going up against Cleveland. You're going up against Pittsburgh. You're going against the Titans. Then you got a tiny break against AFC opponents because you're going to go a up-and-coming Detroit Lions ball club. You need to get to the quarterback. That's just how it is. You let a quarterback sit back and chill in the pocket. I promise you, Pickett and Watson are going to be living large. There's just no way you can just settle and think that everything is going to be okay the way it stands as status quo. It just shows you that Tyus Bowser, there's a little bit more to it. There's a little bit more to David Ajabo. There's a little bit more to Dafe Owe when it comes to these injuries and the healing of them. So, yes, we talked about the training aspect of things, but there's also the healing aspect of things. And hopefully they can get back on point and do what they need to do. But to your point, as far as Kyle Van Noy, he's in a situation where I think they probably would have liked to have signed him earlier anyway. However, when you look at the bigger picture, money talks. And in the offseason, he probably thought, oh, man, well, look what Justin Houston did. And, yeah, that's Justin Houston. Obviously, Carolina wanted to roll the dice. They did. At the same time, Ravens didn't. Now he needs to find a space. They need him. I think that there's like a mutual agreement there when it comes to, the season's already started, so you're not going to get, that big money, but you're going to get some money and you're going to be able to show us. And I'm sure there's probably some incentive laden contract talk for him to help him feel like, if he does play well, he can earn it, earn his keep. So yeah, lots of experience, lots of savvy as far as being able to move around in different spots. Mike McDonald's defense, it's what does he like to say? It's a positionless defense where you can just, plug in and play and do whatever you need to do. So hopefully he'll be able to do what he needs to do type of a mindset. And we'll see him be productive for the Ravens, especially in these next 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to Kyle Van Noy quickly because he has like a Kyle Van Noy show and everything. He does game predictions every week. He picked the Ravens to be 3-0 right now. He did not pick against the Ravens once in these first 3 weeks. If he had picked the Bengals over the Ravens, maybe it would have been a little hot water coming into Baltimore. But again, I think it's a good sign. It's like the Duron Harmon signing, essentially, where he's a guy that probably shouldn't have still been out there. Like, I think he's a good enough player to have been on a roster come week one. But I think you're right, Q, where I think some of the reports coming out where he was looking for more Justin Houston-esque money in the offseason, and Clowney was able to kind of come to a price where the Ravens were comfortable with that in the offseason. And as the season goes on, obviously, I think the price that players are willing to play for the most part, not everybody, but, they want to get on the field and they want to find an opportunity. I think it's a good opportunity for Van Noy, a good opportunity for the Ravens, and he can make a big impact early on. I don't know if he's going to play week 4 against Cleveland or if he's going to have a big role considering he literally just got there, but he had contact with the Ravens in the offseason. So, it's almost like the Des Bryant situation a couple of years ago, which was we'll keep you on hold for now, and if we need you, we'll give you a call, and that's what they did.
Yeah, and I think the main thing is, he said he passed the Ravens run test during the beginning of training camp. My thing is, okay, that's cool. Let's hope that he is in good, strong football shape. Obviously, not getting contact and all that. But I think that's the biggest thing when you bring in different street free agents. It's whether or not they have the ability to just come in and play well.
Yeah, 100%. And on the other side of this, we're going to be talking still one more question about the Ravens pass rush. We'll also get into the offensive questions and what we've seen from Todd Monken and company, Lamar Jackson so far. So be sure to stay tuned. I'm planning to talk about on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by eBay Motors, and our partners over at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft, scouting the waiver wire, every week going to be providing you with players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Vinny's picked out for us on this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. And for this one, 49ers second-year quarterback Brock Purdy's picked off right where he's left off as a star rookie passer down the stretch last season with a sharp play, and Kyle Shanahan's diverse loaded passing game this season. In week 4, Purdy is going to be able to get a favorable matchup at home against Arizona's defense. Purdy should manage multiple scores with 250-plus passing yards as San Francisco builds an early big lead in another blowout. And Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football, again, is going to help you win a fantasy championship at eBay Motors. Knows championship teams about each player being a perfect fit. That's the same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack bumpers, whatever your ride needs, eBay Motors has it with eBay Guaranteed Fit. It's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All items only, exclusions apply. We are back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens here. Kevin Ostraker still talking with Qadry Ismail and Q. I want to wrap up the Kyle Van Noy conversation with just how you're feeling about the Ravens pass rush, assuming that Owe and Ajabo and Bowser have to miss a little bit more time. Jadeveon Clowney is essentially your number one guy at that stage. But then you have Tavius Robinson. I mean, Van Noy is going to be a guy who can come up for you. I mean, Lee Cam also was on injured reserve, so that's another pass rusher who you don't have. They have a couple of guys on the practice squad, but how do you feel about a Clowney, Van Noy, and Robinson trio before those 3 other guys can come back?
I like Jadeveon Clowney. I know that for sure. Robinson, kind of young. Van Noy, we'll see. I mean, that's kind of like the simple of it all. But I'd be interested to see, is it a rotation? Is it going to be a situation where, they move Van Noy around? We're clearly seeing Jadeveon just, man, I didn't know he had such a motor. I knew he had game and all that. You're not going to be, number one overall draft choice just because, but I didn't know that he had that much left in the tank. And it's showing clearly the way he's playing. So we'll have to see. I mean, it's easy for me to speculate, but I'd rather see it like the way in which, you're looking at Van Noy. It's easy for us to just think that he's just going to be a plug and play. But until we actually see it, then I guess we'll just have to hold back on our reservation as far as saying he's going to be this amazing impact player. And, oh, my gosh. I mean, there's a reason why you were out in the street to begin with. And that's not a knock. It's just the reality of it all.
Sure. Yeah, and it's not a knock at all. But I think for now, the Ravens Q offensively, that was the big storyline for them in week 3. The 4 fumbles on 4 straight drives, the inability to finish the game, the miscues overall. We kind of brought that up at the very top of the show. But I think it's led to some questions about how the offense has looked so far. It's always going to be a work in progress when you have a new system and a new coordinator and some new pieces coming in. I never expected the Ravens offense to go out there and like set the world on fire and be the best unit in the league starting in week 1. But I know people are saying that, there hasn't been the deep shot ability of the offense, I guess, hasn't been up to par outside of the Zay Flowers and a couple of other instances here and there. I mean, again, the Ravens also are shuffling in a lot of guys injury-wise right now, where like it's very hard to come up with chemistry when you keep losing guys and having to keep sub in and sub out, and this guy comes back, but then 2 other guys get hurt. So what are your early takeaways from what we've seen on offense? I know week 3 was kind of the down point for the season so far.
So again, it is week 3, and John Harbaugh in his press conference was right. You don't crown a champion in week 3. You can certainly put yourself in good position. Ravens at 2-1, obviously putting themselves in good position. When you look at the way they handled their business in Cincinnati with their injuries, that was impressive. I love the fact that you had some shots that vertical shots is basically what people say throwing it down the field. It's the vertical shots, that they're throwing down the field, and they're throwing shots down the field. Did they necessarily throw the ball down the field this game? No. But then again, that's right. They were turning the ball over. You were having some 3 and outs. You were having some scenarios where you weren't sustaining drives and changing the dynamic of what the defense was going to give you to take those shots down the field, to put you in the man-to-man coverage and say, okay, cool, now we can go ahead and make them things happen. I think Lamar missed on a few throws that would have kept on the drive alive, and knowing that if the drive was still alive, you get more opportunities to throw the football down the field. So, Tomlin, I'm sure the national pundits are trying to make, gross generalizations, but I think those in the know, they're in the mindset of recognizing that, number one, this is the tiniest of sample size. Did you not see the first 2 games? And at the same time, you're going to get a more aggressive look when you can sustain drives. When you sustain drives, good things happen. When you don't sustain drives, the other team's going to get more opportunities, and they're going to feel emboldened by what they're running and what they're doing. And I think that's what we saw. We saw a Colts team feeling pretty good about themselves as far as flying to the football. I mean, they were deserving of winning. That deserving of winning happened.
Yeah. And I know that part of it, Q, also was just the general sloppiness. It's been a pretty general sloppy start. The 13 penalties in week 1. Ravens only had 1 penalty for 5 yards in the Colts game, and they still lost somehow because, again, it was just execution, the fumbles, etc. But do you think it's been too sloppy? Like, I know that we can kind of generalize and say, it's just the start of the season. The rust is getting they're shaking off the rust and everything. But how long do you kind of use that and say it's just rust, it's just rust? At what point do you say, look, the coaches have to get the guys ready and the players have to execute, and that's just the bottom line?
Yeah, I mean, it is the bottom line for sure because it's the regular season. Every game counts, every play counts. But there is something to be said about playing. And again, I'm looking at it, pulling back and looking at it and recognizing this. When you look at, like, for example, the Dallas Cowboys and the way they're playing, they came out playing extremely good, and then all of a sudden, boom, they lay an egg. That's a situation where you got a good team and another team matching the level of play for that good team. You look at the Bills, where the Bills, boy, man, they turning the ball over. Oh, my goodness. The world's caving in. Then all of a sudden, they go up against the Commanders, who the Commanders, oh, my gosh, they're looking really good. Then they just whoop up on them. You look at the Denver Broncos, you think, oh, my gosh, this is going to be crazy. Oh, they're going to be, Sean Payton is going to revive them and all that. The Miami Dolphins, like, they're playing well. Okay. Oh, the Miami Dolphins put up, yeah, they did. They put up 70 on them. It's that scenario where it's the unpredictability of the NFL. Everyone, when you look at it, well, they're professionals. And so you're going to have these anomalies, but then you're also going to have, like, these truths. It is self-evident that the Jets are not created equal, and they suck. Their offensive line, as well as their quarterback play, is not good. So what does that mean? That means that, they can have the greatest defense and all the things, but it don't matter. They're going to get outscored. You see it across the league. I mean, the Arizona freaking Cardinals, Josh Dobbs, like, who knew? But again, they executed. And I think for the Ravens and this ball club, it has to be one of those scenarios where, what is the lesson and the takeaway from this? You can't take anybody for granted. If you think you're just going to show up because I'm Lamar Jackson, well, guess again, there are going to be some dudes after you. You think you're just going to show up and just play because, man, I'm Zay Flowers and they just supposed to give it to me? Well, they're going to take it away. Oh, boy, man, you're a free agent. Boom, you come in there, you running and toting the rock, and you thinking you doing your thing, and all of a sudden you get the ball punched out. Well, Kenyon Drake, you just lost all kind of momentum for what we thought as a fan base was going to be a big game. I mean, this is just the reality of it all. It's professional football. It's not perfect. And at the same time, it's how you respond. I think that's the main thing. How is this team going to respond going against a division opponent on the road?
I think that's a great way of putting it, because we can talk about, well, they have to fix this and they have to fix that. But the reality is there's so much parity early on where you don't really know who's good and who's not. And I always give it about a month. Like, after week 4, I say these are starting to become trends. After about a month and a half, I say these are trends and this has to be better. Mm-hmm. This is really good. Yeah. The first couple of weeks, there's always going to be some sort of rust, but that doesn't take away from the fact that, I know you talked about it, Q, is, you have to show up to play. You can't just use the rust excuse and then drop a game that you probably should have won and say, well, it's okay because it was just rust and it'll be better. We could look back on that week 3 Colts game, Q, and say, man, they really needed to win that one because either it's the division or AFC seeding. That's really tough. And so for a player like Kenyon Drake, who, comes up from the practice squad, the play was really nice outside of the fumble, and credit to the Colts defender. He punches the ball out. But that essentially, I thought, sucked all the momentum out of the offense, out of the Ravens, out of the stadium. And for that, Devonta Freeman is coming for that spot, Kenyon Drake. So you better watch out because he's coming for it. They might got to bring back Jamal Lewis and get all those guys in there. But at this point, the Ravens running back room, Q, you can make an argument. You got to bring back Tyson Williams and get him in there and bring back all those Ravens running back legends. But coming up in the final part of the show, we will be talking about the Ravens and Browns, who could be available, who might not be, and what this divisional rivalry could end up looking like this year. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Plenty to talk about on the show. But first, this episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. And don't be caught unprepared. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. Jase handles everything from online evaluation, licensed pharmacy, medication delivery, and ongoing consultation and care. There are a lot of moments when, I've been in pain, I've broken multiple bones, I've been sick a bunch, and Jase Medical is a way that works for so many different people. They have so many customer reviews that are positive. And also, Jase Medical is super simple. You go online, fill out a form, then you get a prescription, life-saving medications right to your door. The Jase case gives you peace of mind so that you are not just hoping you have access to the medication in an emergency. Jase Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand. So with storms, shortages, pandemics, reliance on other things as well, there also could be supply chain issues. We need to be prepared more now than ever, and Jase Medical has you covered there. Again, everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jase Medical offers the Jase case. The Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. It gives you a peace of mind so that you're not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jase Medical, make sure you have the medication in hand. Jase Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation, licensed pharmacy medication, delivery, and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Get $20 off these life-saving antibiotics today from Jase Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. We return Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher is still chopping it up with Qadry Ismail as we dive into Week 4 Cleveland talk. The Ravens is another big divisional game for them. It's crazy to think, after next week, the Ravens will be done with all their AFC North road games for the entire season. I think it benefits them later on. But as we kind of talked about with the Ravens offense still trying to, I guess, find an identity, for a lack of a better term, and figure things out, this is a really important stretch for him, starting with the Cleveland team that Deshaun Watson, I'm still not sold on the move there. They lose Nick Chubb, really unfortunate injury for them. But that defense, Q, is no joke over there in Cleveland.
They fly to the football, and they hit well. And I think a lot of it is just the way Garrett plays. His mindset is infectious into that team. Like, my goodness, man. And their corner play, I mean, there are no slouches on that team whatsoever. I think the way they played against the Pittsburgh Steelers showed an awful lot. Can't really say much as far as their offense, but defensively, my goodness. I mean, there's some ballers on that squad.
It's going to be interesting because I think with the way Myles Garrett has played for his entire career, honestly, and the moves that they made, I was a big fan of Cleveland's offseason this offseason. I wasn't a fan of the Deshaun Watson move last offseason, but I've been a big Andrew Berry guy for a while. The defense, it seems like every year since he's been there, they've addressed a need, but then left a couple, and then addressed one, then left a couple. But it felt like this was the year they tied it all together. The defensive vibe for them has been atrocious for years, ever since Sheldon Richardson left a couple of years ago. But they bring in Shelby Harris late in the offseason, Dalvin Tomlinson, who's really good. Juan Thornhill, their safety addition, was a great addition by them. They have a lot of guys on that defense. And with, depending on who's back, if Ronnie Stanley comes back, obviously that helps. And not to mention former friend, almost multiple time friends, Darius Smith, on the other side of Myles Garrett. That it's a tough ask to go out there and put up consistent points on a Cleveland defense that through 3 weeks is the number 2 rated pass defense, or no, number 2 rated rush defense, or number 1 rated pass defense in the NFL. Like that, that is just a tall task for any team. The Browns, get this, the Browns on the ground this year are giving up 2.8 yards per carry this year, under 3 yards per carry through 3 weeks. And through the air, net yards per attempt, 3.5. What do you think the keys are? How do you attack this Cleveland defense? Because Garrett's going to get his. I think you have to try to at least establish some semblance of a run game, but can you do that with Melvin Gordon and Kenyon Drake potentially if Gus Edwards and Justice Hill can't play? I think you have to try to just make this Cleveland defense respect you up front early on, and then from there you can take the deep shots, and hopefully you can hit on a couple of them.
Well, everything is lost, and all hope is gone. All right, I got it all out of my system. Just as we saw with the Colts game, and the way that, if you looked at the way they probably looked at the film and saw the Ravens offense go up against a very fast and good Cincinnati Bengals defense, you would have been like, oh my God, this is not going to happen. Oh my gosh. You got to just take advantage of everything that they're giving you. If you do have a hole, you got to hit it up in there and get 7-8 yards at a clip. At the same time, taking shots down the football field being smart about taking those shots and executing them. If you get that short field, it's a touchdown. It can't be anything else. Can't be anything less. It has to be a touchdown. I think those are, my thoughts when I look at the way this game is going to develop. Are you prepared to have that bounce back week? If you're prepared to have that bounce back week, cool. I think game on. If you're not, it's going to be an eye opener, and it might be one of those things where it does come down to a Justin Tucker late field goal to secure the victory. This is a winnable game for sure, but it's going to be a tough. Zadarius Smith's going to have a little something extra. Myles Garrett's going to be Myles Garrett. You talked about the safeties. There's going to have to be some misdirection to get them off their game. I think that's going to be really the big key. And when it comes to the Devontae Freemans of the world, but in this form, as in Kenyon Drake and company, I think it's just, man, we can't just put it all on Lamar. We got to do our part too. I think that's going to be really important when you look at what is presented before them. If you get one-dimensional, it's over. I don't see this going to be in favor of the Ravens, and then you're staring down at 2-2 heading into Pittsburgh, which you don't want.
Yeah, and I'm personally not sold on Deshaun Watson still, but he looked a lot better against the Tennessee Titans in week 3 than he did against the Steelers in week 2. Now, those are two very different teams, two very different defenses, and it was a very low bar for Deshaun Watson to clear in terms of having a better performance. But in this game, you have to just make him feel uncomfortable with, hopefully, Jadeveon Clowney stepping up, some of the interior guys like Justin Madubuike, Broderick Washington hopefully getting home, and freeing up guys like Roquan and Patrick Queen to go out there and make plays. Now, with some of the guys potentially coming back, I know some people are saying, well, maybe this could be the week Marlon starts to ramp up. Could Ronnie Stanley come back potentially? Is Justice Hill going to be a guy that's going to be ready with a toe injury? It feels like with Marlon, we're getting to a point, and obviously week 4 is the week, where if the Ravens were to not put Marlon on IR, which they didn't, they would have gotten him back week 5. If he doesn't play in week 4, the question becomes, well, why didn't you just put him on IR in the first place? Do you feel like this could be a Marlon week? Do you feel like we could start to see Marlon back at practice starting today?
Well, I mean, I can say the John Harbaugh line, well, we're just going to let the injury report kind of look at it that way. But I do think that, if he was, as they said they, originally, put forth for him, that the plan was to bring him back, don't put him on IR because, there's a potential for him to get back and get back ready to go. The crazy thing is, that secondary is playing pretty damn good. I'm not overly concerned as much as I don't know. I'm not, I guess, saying we definitely need to have Marlon sit out, but I'm not going to rush back a guy who I'm looking at, later in the year. A Ronnie Stanley, potential Linderbaum. I'd love to figure those two guys out more than I would say from an injury standpoint, who you getting back. And if it is Marlon, take your time, Marlon. And at the same time, I also think that, from a bigger picture aspect of things, if he is back, then hallelujah. This is just another bonus to have in your arsenal when it comes to, what's before you, and knowing that the Ravens defense is looking pretty damn good. I mean, to be honest with you, I love the way Kyle Hamilton is played. He's playing. Goodness, if he don't get AFC Defensive Player of the Week, something's wrong. I know the defense didn't necessarily lose the game, and obviously, however the criteria is, but his numbers and his stats and what he did is quite impressive. So, from that aspect of things, I think, it's looking good. I don't know. I mean, I think the whole flow of what we're seeing from Mike McDonald and his offense or his defensive staff against that Cleveland Browns offense without Nick Chubb, I'm liking it.
I'd be pretty shocked if Mike McDonald wasn't a head coach in the NFL in the next 2 to 3 years, maybe even next year. And I don't want to put that energy out there because I don't want him to leave Baltimore. He's been that good. Maybe the
Yeah.
Ravens, do you remember with the Costa Q when he pretty much had the deal where he would become the successor to Ozzie, and that was pretty much reportedly set in stone, and that was what was put out there. Well, maybe it's the same thing with Harbaugh. Maybe they say, you know what, Mike, don't leave and we'll give you the reins once Harbaugh ends up retiring / leaving the organization / getting, regardless of what happens with him. The fact that guys like, and I don't want to take away from the players, Brandon Stevens has played really well. Ronald Darby stepped in. Rocky Yassine's made a couple of nice plays. Kyle Hamilton, obviously, we know what he did in week 3. And then Geno Stone coming in and playing well too. Combination of players and coaches playing really well, and they're going to have to do that again in week 4 against Cleveland, a team that, again, will not be an easy game. And I'm excited. AFC North football, as you know, Q, always has that extra little juice to it. So I'm excited to see what ends up happening. But I appreciate you hopping on, Q. That's all I have for you today. And hopefully no more injuries. I always say it, and then it never comes true. So maybe we'll see a guy or two go down, but hopefully guys will be able to come back, and there will not be anything else. No new guys going down. The Ravens hopefully will come out with a win in week 4 against, I think, what is a very talented Browns team.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think, just a classic, back and forth Cleveland Ravens matchup. I think that if they can get to Deshaun Watson, create some turnovers, create a short field, you are talking about Lamar Jackson and his elusiveness and his ability to be a competitor, to make it, star power and win. And so we got Justin Tucker. You don't.
That could be the key. I know it wasn't, unfortunately, the key for the Ravens in week 3 with those weird field conditions and the interesting decisions by John Harbaugh to not try him back out there for a couple of 60-plus yarders. But I always bet on, I live and die by Justin Tucker. If I have to live and die by Justin Tucker 10 times out of 10 times, 9 times out of 10, maybe even 10 times out of 10, he'll come through for you in those situations. But I appreciate you, Q. Thanks so much for hopping on. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Be sure to subscribe, follow along, audio form, video form, subtext. We're available everywhere. Coming up tomorrow, more Ravens content, continuing to dive into that week 4 matchup with the Browns. So be sure to stay tuned for that. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.